Okay.
Speaking of which, I want to talk a little bit more about Black Panther and the other things going on with it, which was that it's in doubt of making $1 billion, even though it did make $180 million domestic this weekend, which is down from $202 million for Black Panther 1. But if you think about it, that's before inflation, so it actually made quite a bit less than the first Black Panther did.
I could get used to this.
It came in. It's the number 2 opening weekend movie of the year behind Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which opened to $187 million, and it is the 8th highest grossing MCU, or it's the 8th highest opening MCU movie. The rest of which were all Avengers movies: Black Panther 1 and Spider-Man: No Way Home. What is so funny, my friend?
I don't know. I don't see an end to Marvel movies now.
I was thinking about this the other day. I was talking to somebody who said that they'll become passé and eventually nobody will care about it anymore. But I don't know if I buy that. It used to be that when corporations were more decentralized, you could expect new trends to take over. But these companies are literally so big that they will just force it forward and you won't have a choice. And like I said, we went to the theater. It was packed. There was plenty of people there laughing at all the bad jokes. And I liked it. I thought the movie was fine. Like
the first one was really good. I generally liked the first Black Panther a lot. I haven't seen this one, but
I want to read a few comments from our Instagram page that pertain to this. Actually,
okay,
they're pretty insightful. One said, "Same like when I was saying I have this inexplicable animosity toward Marvel and I can't tell why." Someone said, "Same, Marvel had its time to shine, but after 10,000 fighting movies, yes, it's time to see Marvel fade out into the nothingness of the universe." Another one said, "If I had to guess, the animosity it probably comes from the gradually shittier content Marvel has been producing,
CGI
as well as making a dead actor's corpse into a mannequin for them to profit off of. That and the fact that everything that company has produced was nonstop fighting movies."
Yeah.
See, these two people say, like, the action all blends together. None of it means anything. There's no finality to death.
I think that there is a market to move on for fighting. I don't think fighting movies go away. I think live action fighting movies come back, like John Wick. Like when it feels like, even that one feels like there's
not
no
like
stakes.
overpowered.
Yeah, even that one feels like it's got no stakes. He like literally fell off the top of a building in the last one, and he's like kind of okay. But it's Keanu Reeves, so I can I will forgive him the way that I will give him the benefit of the doubt the way those people on Twitter were giving Kevin Smith the benefit of the doubt.
There's so many films. Apparently. Like there's so many film students in the U.S. like make movies, guys. Like, why are there better independent movies that like break the scene?
And also we should talk about better writers too, because there was a lot of people talking about how there was a plethora of racial stereotypes and racism in this movie. Now I'm going to be honest. When Tim came back and he mentioned this to me before we had gone to see it, when I watched the movie, I mean, it's there, I guess, but I was able to lose myself enough behind the characters in the world that they had created that I didn't see it that way, though that's clearly, when you're at the writing phase, that's different. The thought had to go into making those characters that way, so it's there, but I didn't notice it. I don't know if I would have noticed it until Tim had mentioned it.
If the argument is that the stereotyping was unfair to the black characters in the movie, then
I think there's all around.
I think it was mainly like anti-white sentiment in it. But if you're arguing it about the stereotypes of black characters in the movie, I understand it from the angle that they are portraying this extremely overpowered, high-tech science fiction society in Africa that still is flinging spears and carrying buckets on their heads. Like they have all of the technology that they laser beam up into UFOs. They have like this insane like unobtainable substance that gives them power over all the other nations on the earth.
But isn't
yet they still resemble like real world conditions of like struggling developing African countries, that is kind of weird.
But I always look at that stuff as more artistic choice. It's like cyberpunk. It's like the tone of cyberpunk, right?
I'm not saying I agree with
blending. It's the blending. I think they're talking more about race relations between African American. Well, in this case, not African Americans.
Wakandans
blacks and Mexicans. That was the proxy.
But also,
war.
I saw disagreements about the way that the Wakandan and American conflict was portrayed. So, like, some people are saying that this critique and the central theme of, like, corruption from the U.S. government is saying there are only a few bad apples instead of painting with a broad brush that all of it is evil. And then I saw this post with a screenshot of Val, the director of the CIA in the movie, saying any future project involving this character is going to have so much propaganda, it's going to be insufferable. At first, I agreed with it, but I didn't realize that what they were asserting is they think that this movie had pro-US propaganda. Insane. Well, like, that's not even close to the truth.
The idea that that Martin Starr that he could be a good guy, but then there's bad apples in the government. I mean, the same thing with Captain America: Winter Soldier.
Is that not reality?
And that's it. It's funny. I have a love-hate relationship with those genres, right? Because I can watch all the cop shows, all the military shows I want, and understand that what I'm watching is good storytelling, what I consider good storytelling. But when you think about the realities of the world we live in, it is a form of propaganda. But I'm not looking at it in that context. I'm looking at it in the context of somebody creating characters that are worth aspiring to with situations that are worth overcoming, and that's a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily think that writer is out there to get me to recruit me for the military or to be a police officer. I think they're just markets that people have saturated, and there's money to be made there, and the money's to be made in creating good characters. And to be good characters, you have to do stuff that people would want to see, and that's to be heroes.
Yeah, I mean,
like when we watched when we talked about the SVU storyline.
When we talked about SVU, we've pretty much covered that it's all but statistically proven that these cop shows, SVU specifically, but also as a broader theme, definitely condition people to think that victims get justice more often than they do, that cops are more proactive in these cases than they are, or that they progress faster than they actually do in the real world. And
give them like overt senses of justice that may be there in a real person's underpinning, but not necessarily there in some self-righteous way where they stick their chest out to the air and talk about getting justice for people. That may be important to many of them, and that's why I have a problem with people not understanding that there's a fine line there, and that there's nuance that's worth talking about. That just because that you enjoy that material doesn't mean that you aren't blind to the realities of like that there are bad cops, there is bad aspects of the American military industrial complex, all these things. And the same thing would go true here. Like, I do think though that these companies, when Disney makes these products, whether we like it or not, these are pro-establishment people that do love they're still pro-establishment people.
There are warring establishments, and if anyone is trying to argue that Wakanda Forever is valorizing the US government in any way by having this bad apples theme, that's completely off base. Like, not even close to their intended purpose in the movie. And this tweet pointed it out. It's kind of unlikely. Wakanda Forever pretty explicitly says the idea of America destabilizing countries is wrong, like they're the colonizers, and Val is obviously a villain. Yeah. There was no ambiguity to it whatsoever.
She literally said, I can't wait for people to die. Like later on in the movie, like they threw that line. That wasn't the line exactly, but it was something like that. And that was like, that screams of that scene where I love these things in movies. It's like, have you ever seen the CinemaSins where they do the bad guys suddenly a rapist cliche? Sorry for the R word. Like it's like a cliche, but you have to do that one thing that makes the character so unforgivable because it makes the story more easy to delineate who's the good guy and who's the bad guy in situations that might be otherwise more morally ambiguous. And they had to add that line to her to make you understand fully that she's not the good guy.
Which is insanely counterproductive because typically, at least for me, the best pieces of media are those where you somewhat understand the antagonist's motives and you somewhat relate to them, and you're like, man, like it really sucks that these series of events had led you to this point, to this inevitable point almost.
I go back and forth on that. I do understand the draw of characters where it's like every bad guy is the hero in their own story. But at the same time, sometimes I just like a mustache twirling villain that's just out to destroy the world just because they said so, because they want to. Like, I love the simplicity of that story because I don't think that most of Hollywood has proven in recent years that they're capable of telling a more complex story anyways.
It all depends on the writing.
Go back to basics.
I think it all depends on the writing, but at least the scripts there were the most high quality for my taste.
Yeah.
I think the best villains, usually it's when it's an ensemble of villains and they somewhat collaborate because their interests convene. However, they all have their own individual thing going, which is, I think, the most true to life version that it is, because typically people that are unlikable or you see them with certain characteristics, it's typically because they're so selfish with their own self-interest that, you know, they don't have room to collaborate with anything else. Yeah. So like everyone's seen as a means to an end. And those are the type of villains that really enthrall me. And
here's the other thing, Mary, that this is why I don't think that we can trust people to really understand that type of nuance, because we are in a time now where everything is so simplistic that now just because Shuri and Riri Williams were like cool with one another, that means they must be gay.
Yeah, and we've talked about this recurring theme a lot with like male friendships in media.
You're not allowed to just be dudes that are friends anymore.
Yeah, like there's no such thing as like just a wholesome bromance.
Shipping ruined
plotline.
This is shipping
and like chronically online Tumblr. MCU stands
in Tumblr.
And yeah, specifically Tumblr.
So it says
are to blame for a lot of this creepy this creepy behavior on the internet.
So basically in the movie, Shuri goes to, is it MIT or is it Caltech?
It's MIT.
She goes to MIT to take Riri Williams back to Wakanda. And I will say that one thing. I will give them this. They made Riri Williams absolutely insufferable in this movie, which means they are okay with making things comic book accurate. It's just not the stuff we want to be comic book accurate because she's insufferable in the comics. And basically the idea here is that because they're like friendly with each other and they kind of smile at one another, well, that must mean they must be gay, because this is the world we live in now where there's no such, there are no defining lines to anything.
Yeah, and I also saw an argument that just because Shuri was trying to make sure that Namor didn't kill Riri, the scientist, that means that she's in love with her.
Well, so did the
Queen. Like, there's just no nuance.
So did the Queen. Was the Queen in love with her? Because that would be kind of creepy.
Right.
Because the Queen is super old.
Yeah, and also, like, they aged Riri up for the movie.
Yes, from I think she was 16 in it to 19. Also,
not only that, but like she's portrayed as far less mature than both Shuri and Vermonda.
She is exactly how. If you wanted to teach a master class in how to make a character that nobody could possibly like, she is a very, very good example of that. Mm-hmm. She is, she's kind of glib. She's extremely, not self-righteous, but she is kind of self-righteous in a lot of ways when she talks about, how everyone underestimates her and everything. And she's very snarky, and the snark feels like 90s snark in a world. Like, I thought at first it was done on purpose to show a sort of a linguistic callback to like America. Like the Wakandans have their accent and they have this very, very pronounced way of speaking that is more formal. And then you hear this kid from the US who, let's face it, if she was going to MIT, I don't know if I buy that she would sound like that. I would assume that she would sound...
Well, that's because you're racist.
I would assume that she would sound more, I don't know, professional. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Like it didn't feel real. It felt like a Hollywood example of what they were like, wouldn't it be cool if this person went to MIT? It didn't ring true to anything in the real world, and it was just really, really unlikable.
All of the characters who were supposed to be likable were not likable. The characters who were supposed to be frightening were not frightening.
I think Shuri. I think you're
aside
supposed to,
from Shuri.
Yes, I think. I think Okoye is exactly how she's supposed to be in that movie, and I think that works for her. She's she's a bit emotionally distant. She's closed off because of her military role. I think Okoye and Shuri are really the ones that carry that movie, with help from Angela Bassett with Ramonda's two speeches that she gave that I felt she did really, really well. I actually engaged with someone. I normally don't really get into those types of things online, talking about how I felt like her reaction to Okoye losing Shuri made sense, because even though, yes, she should have taken responsibility for it, I don't feel like logic is going to be how a person reacts in a situation like that. I think blaming someone else for something you might have had a hand in felt kind of unbelievably human to me. So
yeah, that made sense. I just see. Okay, I want to say firstly, Namor was not an intimidating villain at all. And that's his physique and the way he comes across on camera. But there's this warring faction of the ones shipping Shuri and Namor, and the ones shipping Shuri and Riri, or Shuriri, which I just learned today is actually the ship name that they used in the canon, like in the actual comic books. This was part of the plot. I don't know how it progressed or where it went. I did not read the comics, but they look like trash anyway, so I'm sure I'm not missing out. But someone tweeted, like, there's just this disturbing level of investment, like emotional investment in it, that I find like secondhand embarrassing. Someone tweeted, Ryan Coogler, can you please confirm that Namori is not a thing and that Shuriri will be, so I can move on with my life?
Yeah, it's that stuff is always, I've always thought that's a weird, like, even me, like in my most not like good parts of my life, never felt such a connection to something that I had to feel like it was like a second hand, like I was actually part of their lives. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just weird.
Honestly, I wonder where this whole shipping phenomenon, I mean, I know where it arises, like physically, but psychologically where it arises. I wonder how much
village matchmakers.
It goes all the way back to moonlighting. In Hollywood, it goes all the way back to moonlighting and stuff there. But I mean, that type of thing with characters, the X-Files with Mulder and Scully, that stuff has been going on for as long as we can imagine. And I think a lot of it is like, now we're in an age now where people are they're lonelier than they used to be.
That's what I wanted to get to. I feel that some people are just so terminally online.
Yeah.
That I know, and I don't want to say names, but I know people in my life that have completely given up on dating and finding a partner and anything. And like, you know, like I don't want to be like the annoying Latina aunt who's like, hey, mijo, when you get married? But like, they should just, some people, it's like, I don't know, I don't think it's ever gonna happen, and I'm okay with that. And these people,
don't tell Mary that.
I feel like some of them I won't. It's just between us.
She's gonna tell you that you gotta do your part for society, right?
Yeah. Anyway, brings back memories, and I got so sidetracked by that. But these people, they've given up so much on their own like personal development that it's like, well, at least with my favorite character, you know,
like you're living vicariously through them, which is just sad.
And it's kind of like the next step from being like a sports fan. It's like, I'm a champion as a result of these like strangers being very like talented.
I feel that way about politics. Like, it feels very sports team oriented now. So let's also want to point out before we move on that they did the movie was edited in Kuwait. But all the other releases, Saudi Arabia and other Middle Eastern countries, the movie was released with no edits made to it. So
because the scene that featured the lesbian couple was literally a blip on the radar.
Yeah, like, and it's gonna change Ghana forever, says Michaela Cole.
Yeah.
Yes, it's gonna change forever. So. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.